Hello, everybody, and welcome into our final preview here at the Hockey Writers Stanley Cup Final. We're right at the end here. It's been almost a week since we've had hockey, though. It's a big layoff between between the Western and Eastern Conference Finals to the Stanley Cup Final. But I've got Jacob Billington and Joey Ganzi here with me, talking Edmonton Oilers, Florida Panthers. Joey, you're here again. The Panthers were in the final last year. You were there from the beginning to the end. But welcome back. I know you last couple previews we haven't been able to join us, but thanks for joining us here.
I appreciate you having me on. I do apologize for not being able to come on. A lot of stuff going on in my personal life. Haven't had a chance really to settle down and try to do one of these things. But just like last year, I am super stoked to be here again.
Yeah, well, we'll see if there's a better result this time for the Panthers. Jacob, thanks for coming on again and covering Edmonton Oilers. First time the Canadian team has been in the final since the Montreal Canadiens back in the bubble. So, yeah, it's been a long time coming. We'll see if a Canadian team can actually win it this time. And that's almost what is it, 30 years since since Canadian teams won the Cup. But thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to talk about the playoffs. Not going to do it with Ottawa.
Yeah, right. So this should be a fun series. We're going to go through and talk a bit about a bunch of matchups, a bunch of storylines. There's plenty of them that have already come out, and such a big gap between series. We've talked about probably every one of them and different articles around. So we're gonna just dive in here. Jacob, I'll start with you talking about the Oilers and their journey to the Stanley Cup Final. Bit of an up and down. I mean, they started with the LA Kings, got through them. Vancouver Canucks was a pretty good, really good series that they almost didn't get through. Talk about their journey so far here.
Well, it's kind of weird because the Edmonton Oilers have four of the best players in the playoffs right now. Like just looking at the points alone, and it feels like they've been the underdog for their last two series, and now this one again. And it's bizarre, but everybody expected them to roll over the Kings. That's exactly what
Yeah.
happened. And then everybody said that the Vancouver Canucks, their depth was going to be too much for the Oilers, and that proved to be incorrect. And then people said the same thing about the Stars. And yeah, the Stars and Canucks are both very deep teams, but people don't appreciate the Edmonton Oilers for how deep they truly are.
Mhm.
And it's just really interesting to see that they are at a point now where people are still saying the same thing. And now this will be three series in a row that people are saying that they just don't have the depth to outmatch their opponent. And I think that it's completely false. I just think that people don't appreciate the Adam Henriques,
Mhm.
the Derek Ryans, the all these depth pieces that the Matthias Janmark especially, they've all been really good. And
Mhm.
so people just underrate them and don't give them the light of the day they really deserve.
For sure. I mean, there was a lot of talk. They're very top heavy, and I mean, to an extent they kind of are, but some of their depth guys have come to play. Like you mentioned, Janmark, Dylan Holloway's gotten a few really good games where he's scored some goals. You're getting some guys just stepping up, and Corey Perry hasn't factored into it yet, and I feel like he's probably going to be a guy that may do something in the final here, to try to break that curse that he seems to have on getting to the final but not winning it. We'll see if that's something. Joey, the Panthers, they're not the underdog this time. They are the favorites. Last year, obviously, were the underdogs, barely squeaking into the playoffs. This time, not the case. Very dominant. They've had some question marks throughout the playoffs here, but talk about their journey so far.
Their journey is this team has taken what they learned from the Cup final and done a complete 180. They have bought into Paul Maurice's system, and you've seen it all season. And in the playoffs, they've shown we don't care how good you are, we don't care how good your goaltending is. We're going to beat you, we're going to grind you out, and we're going to advance. They've beaten a gauntlet of goaltenders. You're starting with Vasilevsky, a very streaky Swayman, and Igor Shesterkin,
Yeah.
and that's that's rough. So I think they know what's at stake. I think they understand what it takes to win. The top guys are finally starting to get rolling. Barkov is having one of the greatest seasons he's had in a while. Verhaeghe's still doing his clutch stuff. Bennett's having fun in the playoffs as he always has. And Lundell's really coming into his own ever since being drafted a few years ago. And everyone's buying in, and they're looking to try to finally get this over with and bring the very first Stanley Cup to Sunrise, Florida.
Yeah, they're a very dominant team, very deep, really good goaltending, really good defense. I mean, there's not a lot of weaknesses that they got, and like you said, they've learned from the past, and we'll see if they can do it against the Oilers. Right. Speaking of Barkov, this is a great jumping off point here. Barkov won the Selke Trophy, and he's going to be probably playing a lot against Connor McDavid, trying to shut him down. But there is the case of being that is going to be matching up, trying to shut him down, and then you take away his offense, which there's always that danger. I know back in 2011 when Ryan Kessler was always against guys, his offense was basically negated, even though he negated the other guy. So, I mean, do you want that for Barkov? I don't know. We'll start with you, Joey, on Barkov versus McDavid. What do you think this matchup? Who's going to win it? I mean, it could just saw off and they're both going to just shut each other down, I guess.
I mean, this is something that's going to be. This feels like Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul almost with how hyped this thing is. You have arguably the most complete player in the NHL versus arguably the best player in the NHL right now. But I don't think Barkov is scared of the challenge. He's gone against some of the toughest in the NHL in terms of forwards. The point leader Kucherov, I don't think he had a single point this past play. I don't know if he scored a goal or a point. I don't remember. I do apologize. David Pastrnak, I know he scored, but for the most part, he shut him down. And Panarin was left off the scoreboard until the end of the series. He has really stepped up in a huge, huge way, taken away a lot of options for these top players, and he's been dominant. And it's only fitting that the final test is Connor McDavid.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And that's like McDavid's been otherworldly again, like how he's been throughout every playoffs he's been in. He's been really good. He's not scoring as much. I mean, a lot of his points are assists, but he has been really good. Jacob, what do you think about McDavid going against Barkov? Is he going to be able to overcome this guy? I mean, he's a Selke Trophy winner for a reason.
Yeah, I'm a little upset because Joey took my stat there, but I have the specifics.
I'm sorry.
I have the specifics here. But so Barkov in the first 3 rounds played just shy of an hour and a half against Kucherov, Panarin, and Pastrnak. And the only one of those players to score a goal with him on the ice was David Pastrnak, who scored 1 in an hour and a half against the top player on each of the 3 teams. That is absolutely insane. Now, do I expect that number to go up when you look at McDavid? Yes, I think so. Might not be McDavid scoring the goals, but the number will go up for goals against. But I do think that he's going to be incredible. And I love the way you put it, Joey, it's kind of like he's going through the gauntlet right now. He's gone through the first 3 and now he's up against the final boss. That's it's very fitting because, I mean, he just won the Selke and he's showing that he can do it in the playoffs too. Yeah. I think with this matchup between McDavid and Barkov, we're looking at the 2 front runners for the Conn Smythe Trophy.
There's another thing, right? That they're going to be battling for that too, and yeah, pretty good. It's going to be one of the best matchups to watch throughout the final. So yeah, that's a big one. Another one I want to touch on is Gustav Forsling against McDavid / Draisaitl, because he's probably going to be up against both of them at times. He's been really good, and I'm still angry because the Canucks drafted him, and there's a whole big thing about it. It's not, I mean, he wasn't ever, I don't know, it took him a while for him to become what he is right now. So I don't know if the Canucks would have waited long enough for him to become who he is, but he's been really good. Jacob, what do you think about this one? I mean, this matchup's going to be a pretty big one. Forsling has been up against the top players throughout the playoffs too. How will he manage to play against these guys?
I think Forsling has, I love this story, and especially getting waived by the Canes, getting claimed by the Panthers. Now look at him; he's got a huge 8-year deal. I think that it's a fantastic story, and he's earned it, especially even just these playoffs. He's been the best defenseman. He's definitely been better than Aaron Ekblad, and he like you said, he's going up against the top guys. He's playing a really strong 2-way game. It's not just a shutdown kind of role like you might see from Kulikov or something. But he's jumping up in the offense. He's getting his looks too. And he's not one to shy away from a hit. He's not one to shy away from making the smart defensive play. Like, he has become an incredibly sound two-way defenseman. And the Florida Panthers, I don't know what it is, but they either got really lucky or they have some of the best development in the organization. So going up against McDavid and Draisaitl is going to be quite the task. I don't think that McDavid and Draisaitl, that is, have gone against a defenseman like Forsling yet, like that high-end guy. Like, they've went up against Drew Doughty, who you can kind of make that comparison, but Drew Doughty's getting older and slowing down. Still great by all means, but and then you got Quinn Hughes and Philip Hronek, who are more offensive minded. They both play good on the defensive side, but they're definitely more offensive minded. And then with the Stars, you got Miro Heiskanen, who's more offensive minded, still a great two-way option. But Forsling is more of the number one defensive kind of guy, and I think that it's going to be a bit of an adjustment for them to go against.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the Stars went against Tanev a lot too, and I mean, Tanev's an older guy as well, so I mean, kind of, I don't know how much Tanev played against McDavid and Draisaitl, but
and Tanev can't skate, and he's not up in the play as much as Forsling is. Like, Forsling is just much more mobile, and so to have such a mobile, defensively strong player is special.
For sure. We'll continue on Forsling, Joey, and this is against now Edmonton Oilers have Evan Bouchard, who's been, I mean, he's been scoring, getting points. Like, what does he have? 26 points in the playoffs right now. And that's insane for a defenseman. What do you think about this matchup? I mean, basically it's a two number one defensemen going against each other, and they're probably going to be on the ice together, too, because Bouchard plays with McDavid and Draisaitl most of the time. So, how is this matchup going to go?
It's very intriguing. Forsling is definitely going to have his hands full with this one, I think. He's as Jacob has touched on, he has been not one to shy away from making a defensive player getting his hands dirty on the forecheck. He doesn't mind stepping up offensively. If he just comes in and keeps doing what he's been doing for the first 3 rounds and keep doing what he does, I think he'll be fine, but it's definitely quite the task.
It's going to be huge. And who does he play with? Is it
on the top line? Yeah, definitely Ekblad.
Yeah.
Ekblad,
so it'd be Ekblad and Forsling going against these guys. So
Ekblad hasn't been the best as of late, but he's stepped up a lot recently, and if he continues to have good games and do what he was drafted all those years ago for, he'll be fine.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a big matchup too. So lots of big ones going. And another one is Zach Hyman versus Sam Reinhart. These two guys are, I mean, they're power play guys. They score a lot on the power play, score a lot around the net. Jacob, I'll start with you with Hyman. I mean, again, another story. He's been scoring just seems like he just elevates his game in the playoffs. He always gets into double digits with goals. He leads the playoffs in goals right now. Talk about Hyman, how he's going to go against. I mean, I don't know if he's going to play against Reinhart, but it's just these two guys seem to be very similar going against. How is Hyman going to go against the Panthers?
Well, Hyman is one strong series away from breaking the record for goals in a playoffs, which is insane. Like, I think he's 6 away from tying it, 7 away from taking the lead, which is insane to think about. Yes, it helps that the Oilers have played a few extra games and like the Gretzky era Oilers, because they were sweeping most of their series. But Hyman has done some incredible things. And one thing to notice is that he opens up his series really strong. So he's scored, I believe, 4 goals in game ones this year. So he had a goal in each of them and then 2 against the Canucks. So he's done, and I believe that's correct. He's done really well just to open up the series and kind of set the tone. And I think that that's where he kind of thrives, is catching people while they're sleeping, getting used to the new system. And again, with the Panthers, they're not used to playing the Oilers. You heard Matthew Tkachuk say that he doesn't know how to play against Stuart Skinner. He's only played against him a couple times. And even Tkachuk has spent time in Calgary. So you just don't know how these guys play. You're not used to playing against them. So Hyman's really good at kind of fitting in and figuring out how he's going to thrive before the other team figures out how to shut him down.
Yeah, and he's been very consistent throughout the playoffs too. And I mean, he had a bit of a lull there against the Canucks a bit, but mostly he's been scoring pretty much at will. So here's another guy they're gonna have to try to shut down too. Sam Reinhart hasn't been as dominant as he was in the regular season, but he's still scored some goals. He's still a guy you're gonna have to watch. What do you think about how Reinhart's going to be in this series?
I think he's going to step up just as well as Hyman has. He was kind of struggling a little bit in the Boston series, only a couple goals through 6 games, but in the series against the Rangers, he really started coming into his own. You know, two goals in game 3, and then the game-winning goal in game 4. He understands the task at hand. He's like I said, over the past few years, he's really come into his own. He's been a top player for the team. He knows what's at stake. I think he's going to try to go into this and be as dominant as he can. He has, like I said, he's been a little bit quiet, all things considered, but 8 goals compared to 26 is it's a wide margin. But Reinhardt knows what's at stake, and he's been a playoff performer for a while, so I think he can go into the series with the same integrity as he had in the series before.
Yeah, and he's playing obviously for a contract too. I mean, he's a free agent, and I don't know. Panthers are probably going to want to re-sign him, I'm sure. All right, now another big matchup is special teams. Both teams have been really good power play. Oilers are still in that streak of they've killed 28 straight penalties, and that's a record, franchise record, and they've just been really good both ways. I mean, obviously everyone knows their power play is ridiculous. Joey, how are they going to go against Panthers going against these two ridiculously good special teams? And I know the Panthers have been kind of up and down on their power play throughout the playoffs. How is this going to go? I mean, the special teams, this is a big storyline.
Um, they really have to find a way to start clicking. They started finding the back end of the power play last series, but it started to fizzle out very, very quickly. They really need to figure out who to have on the back end. They need to get more traffic in front. If you take the eyes away from Skinner, then there'll be more pucks in the back of the net. But that's the thing. You're going against a elite penalty kill unit. But on the flip side, I think the penalty kill for Florida is going to be just as dominant. They've gone against some of the toughest power plays in the NHL. The number 1 ranked power play in the Tampa Bay Lightning, a very strong power play in Boston, and very strong power play in the Rangers, and they only had 1 power play goal that entire series. Ironically, it was scored by Vincent Trocheck. But I think, as I said before, with the gauntlet of goaltenders, the gauntlet of fantastic forwards, I think this is just another final stage that Florida has to conquer, and they've shown they can hang with the best. So if they continue to play dominant, they'll have their first cup.
Yeah, and Jacob, I mean, like I say, the Oilers' power play and penalty kill have been beyond elite throughout the playoffs. I mean, the penalty kill wasn't as dominant throughout the regular season, but it's been really good in the playoffs, and it's probably a big reason why they're here. Will it stay dominant against the Panthers? Because the Panthers can roll out a pretty good 2 units too.
Yeah, I look at the Panthers and I see them more as like that physical playing down low kind of team. And you look at their previous opponents, and a lot of them were a lot of cycling, where the Panthers, their power play has a lot of like down low, hard forechecking. Like you got Bennett, Reinhart, you got like Matthew Tkachuk, obviously. And so they're going to carry the puck down low. They're going to get in front of the net. Where you look at Vancouver and Dallas and LA, and they're kind of let the defenseman quarterback it and move the puck around. So it's going to be very different kind of opponent for them on the special teams. But I do think that the Oilers' PK has just been fantastic. And when you look at the power play, I mean, their power play has been one of the best in the league. And it wasn't even that good against Dallas. They didn't convert too often. But they're still running at, I think it's 37% at this point. And their penalty kill is like 94%. So they're first in the playoffs in both.
Yeah, that's gonna be a big battle. We'll see who comes out on top, or they're just gonna cancel each other out, and that could happen too. All right, we haven't talked about. Well, we've mentioned Matthew Tkachuk at times here. I want to ask you, Jacob, do the Oilers have an answer for Tkachuk? I mean, Evander Kane's kind of banged up. He may be the only guy that maybe go against him. How are they going to deal with Tkachuk? Because he has been really good against the Oilers. He was in the Battle of Alberta. Oilers got through that, but Tkachuk, I don't know if they have anyone that can match against him, unless you have someone else. What do you think?
It's going to need to be a big series for Vincent Desharnais. I think that if he comes in and plays a really physical series and kind of does a really good job focusing on whether it's going to be Tkachuk or Bennett or Reinhart or any of these guys that really like to get in your face. But don't forget about Corey Perry either. He's still a pest in this league, and he might not be as physical as he was 15 years ago, but he's still absolutely effective. And I think that this is going to be his time to shine. Like you look at the last series again, and I just mentioned it with the power play. Florida's the most physical, aggressive team. And we've seen over the past three series that Evander Kane and Corey Perry just haven't been as effective as they have been in the regular season. This is going to be the series that they show up because they can play that physical game. You even heard Evander Kane say at the end of the Dallas Stars series that he had a hard time because the Stars wouldn't engage in the scrums, wouldn't engage between the whistles. Florida's not going to back down from that at all. And so I think that Evander Kane's going to take another step. And again, Evander Kane feeds off that. It makes him better. So does Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett. Like it goes both ways. But you're going to see a lot more scrums and the whistles in terms of if you've been following the Oilers. And I think that that's going to make them even better.
Joey, what do you think about Matthew Tkachuk? I mean, he's hasn't been as dominant as he was last year, especially goals-wise. He was in double digits already at this point. Also was injured in the final last year. So this is a lot different of Matthew Tkachuk going in here. What do you think? How is he going to play in this one?
I think he still remembers his time during the Battle of Alberta, so he probably has a chip on his shoulder, even Sam himself. I hate Edmonton, but I hate Tampa more. So I think he's going to go in and just do what he does best: be a pest, be in front of the net, and just does what he does. Same thing with Sam Bennett. I think Sam Bennett knows his opponent very well. He's a very dominant playoff performer. He thrives off this kind of energy. He has 6 goals and 4 assists in 12 games. I don't know how 100% he is, but he will probably have no quarrels dealing with Evander Kane or Corey Perry or ever wants to get in his face, because like I said before, with the whole team, they've gone against some of the best. I think they can come in and just do it again, just grind it out. They don't mind getting physical. They don't mind for extracurricular activities after the whistle. This is just to Bennett and Tkachuk. It's just the Battle of Alberta all over again.
Yeah, and this is gonna be a fun. I don't know. There's so many matchups and so many storylines that we can talk about here, and they're all gonna be fun to watch.
And if I recall correctly, coming out of the draft, Matthew Tkachuk said that he always looked up to Corey Perry. That was his idol. That's who he modeled his game after. And now look at this. Who would have thought in 2024 Corey Perry and Matthew Tkachuk? Like that's
oh my God.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good. I think we've covered most of our the things that are going to be talked about in the storylines and stuff. So unless you guys have something else you want to talk about here before we move on to the goaltending, which is another storyline. So Stuart Skinner versus Sergei Bobrovsky. Obviously, Bobrovsky's much more veteran. He'd been through this a few times and also was in the final last year. Stuart Skinner, new thing for him, and he's been up and down throughout these playoffs. His save percentage still looks really bad, but he was really good against the Stars. Seems to have come into his own a bit. Jacob, who's going to win this matchup? I mean, Skinner's obviously the underdog here.
Yeah, Skinner's definitely the underdog here, and I think one thing to look at is that Sergei Bobrovsky is the better goalie. I might lean towards Stuart Skinner in terms of being the better person that can make that one more save than the other goalie. So you take a 10, 20 game sample size, and Sergei Bobrovsky is always going to be the better goalie in this conversation. But I think that Stuart Skinner is really good at just making one more save than the other guy. And I mean, Bobrovsky is too. Like they're both neck and neck. And I'm just trying to make a case for Skinner here. But Skinner is very good at just making as many saves as he needs to. And that's kind of how he's adapted to playing since Calvin Pickard came in for him. And now you look at his resurgence since, and he's been great. His numbers haven't been great, but he's been getting all the wins. He's been making all the saves that he needs to. So he's bounced back really well, and he just kind of, you want to make every save possible, but he knows when it's time to, like, okay, I really have to make these saves now.
Yeah. Joey, I mean, Bobrovsky obviously wants to atone from its final last year because he wasn't that good as he was before. How is this matchup going to go? Is he going to just play better than Skinner and just be the reason, or one of the reasons, that the Panthers win it all?
I do agree that Bobrovsky is the better goaltender in the matchup. It really comes down to how he handles certain scenarios. I mean, he's been in the same exact situation before. He's been through the playoff gauntlet, and he has a decent defense in front of him. I think he's definitely going to come out victorious in this matchup, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as people make it out to be. I mean, you have to still deal with McDavid, Draisaitl, Evander Kane, Evan Bouchard, Darnell Nurse. He has to deal with an offensive gauntlet one more time, and like I said before, it's only fitting for that to be the final one for the Cup final. So I do think Skinner will play just as good. He has to, especially with what's at stake. But I think Bobrovsky's just going to barely edge him out in this matchup for sure.
All right, we've talked a lot about a bunch of players, so there's a lot of choices for this one. Series MVP. Now, like I say, lots of names. So Jacob, who are you picking there?
It's got to be Connor McDavid. I think that doesn't matter which team wins, the series MVP is going to be Connor McDavid, unless Matthew Tkachuk has a 5-goal game in Game 7. I think at this point, win or lose, I think the Conn Smythe is already McDavid's.
Yeah, and it's probably pretty, unless Barkov definitely is pretty close in that too. So we'll see how he plays there. Joey, who are you picking as a series MVP?
Before I do, is it possible for someone to lose a series and still be crowned Conn Smythe?
Giguère.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking. My bad.
Yeah.
I think if I'm gonna have to go with Aleksander Barkov. He's really stepped up in a huge way these playoffs. And if he can successfully shut down Connor McDavid and even put up some offensive points, he's gonna go home with some more hardware.
I will say that Forsling and Bobrovsky deserve to be in that conversation too.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. But I do think they're leaning more, the media is probably leaning more towards Barkov.
Yeah, it's Barkov versus McDavid and a lot of things we've been reading around. So, the biggest matchup in the final, and battle for the Conn Smythe too. All right, this one's tough. Predictions for this series. Jacob, what are you going? Who's winning the Stanley Cup and in how many games?
This is such a hard series to predict. Because is it going to be the Oilers' offense or the Panthers' physicality that takes the win? It's going to be one of them that decides the Stanley Cup. Yeah. I'm going to go with the Oilers' offense, but it's going to be 7 games. All
right, Joey, what do you think?
I've never wanted to be so right in my life. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I've been a fan of this team through the worst days and some of the best days. I think this team has what it takes, and this is the most talent they're going to have in a while. They're strong physically. They're strong defensively. They have great offense. I'm going to take the Panthers in 6.
All right. This is a tough one. I've predicted 7-game series over here, and they haven't all gone 7, but they've all gone long. So I'm going to go with this 7-game series. And the Panthers are going to win this. Unfortunately, Canada's going to still have to wait for a Stanley Cup. But yeah, Panthers in 7, and Game 7 is going to go into overtime. I think we're going to see a lot of overtime in this series, I feel. And we'll see how much of these matchups, who's going to win each one of them.
If it's going that many overtimes, I'm going to have to see my doctor about some blood pressure. That's just not good for me, man.
Yeah, and lots of fun stuff. So we still have a couple days before the final actually begins, but Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Joey, for coming on, talking this series. It should be a fun one to watch, and we'll see who comes out on top. Make sure you're checking out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We have previews. We've got a bunch of articles from different people that have already written about this series, and we'll finally get it going on Saturday. So stay tuned for that. And until next year, until our next playoff preview shows, we'll see you on another video on the Hockey Writers YouTube channel here.